Welcome to Light Over Heat with Professor David Yamani. This week I want to talk about retiring the NRA's Good Guy with a Gun slogan. Last week I spoke more directly to my fellow liberals about some language that we ought not use in discussing guns in the United States. And this week I want to talk more directly to my fellow gun owners about some language that we ought to drop, specifically the NRA's slogan that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. As is well known, this phrase was an Ackerman-McQueen production given to Wayne LaPierre in order to respond to the Sandy Hook massacre. And given what we've seen Ackerman, McQueen, and LaPierre do to the NRA, that in itself might be arguments for dropping the phrase. But when the NRA met in Houston recently, again in the wake of a mass shooting at an elementary school, I was asked by a reporter what I thought might be different this time around. And I said, I hope that the phrase, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, would not be invoked. Of course, I was disappointed. LaPierre didn't use the phrase, but Ted Cruz at the NRA-ILA meeting did, and also President Trump, in his own unique way, used it when he said, as the age-old saying goes, the age-old saying going back to 2012, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Have you ever heard that? In the absence of a member of law enforcement, there is nobody you would rather have nearby when a crisis strikes than an armed, expertly trained member of the NRA. Now, I didn't like the phrase back in 2012 and 2013 when it was rolled out, and I like it even less today for a few reasons. Now, I should say at the outset that there are times when good guys with guns stop bad guys with guns. So that's not the issue here. The issue here is, what does the phrase obscure relative to what it enlightens? And I argue that it obscures more than it enlightens. So for example, as Rob Pincus and other gun trainers frequently mention, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun isn't a good guy with a gun, that many bad guys with guns can be stopped without guns. For example, Dr. John Cheng at the Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church just recently stopped a bad guy with a gun simply by taking an aggressive action in defense of the community around him. And there are many examples of school shooters who were also stopped without good guys with guns being present. Now, a second reason I dislike this phrase is it may encourage people to become armed vigilantes, as we saw in the case of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery or Jordan Davis, where we had people who saw themselves as good guys with guns trying to stop bad guys and actually engaging in murder. I also think that the phrase may encourage people to act imprudently, if not illegally. So we have cases also where people who saw themselves as good guys with guns intervened in situations that they didn't need to intervene in, and it ended up with people dying and those good guys' lives also ruined in the process. And the final reason I don't like the phrase is it really creates too stark a differentiation between so-called good guys and so-called bad guys. And one of my students in my Sociology of Guns seminar at Wake Forest actually brought this up, saying, it's not like we're out in the world and it's a kind of Star Wars world where some people wear white hats and some people wear black hats, and we can see the distinction between the two very clearly. And I actually think that that's a good point, but it also, drawing on Star Wars, highlights the fact that in Star Wars, even not everybody is clearly a good guy or a bad guy, that oftentimes we carry around some aspects of both. And what the real slogan ought to be about good guys and bad guys with guns is that you're only a good guy with a gun until you're not. I'm sure not all of you agree with me about this. If you disagree, let me know why. I'm always interested in developing my thinking on these issues.